welcome to class. I'm Dr. Greg Parsons, and I'll be your instructor and facilitator for this particular class. This session is devoted to an overview and introduction to the class. I'll be talking about the syllabus, what the required readings are, what the schedule is, when assignments will be due. I'm basically giving you an idea about what the expectations are for your performance and my performance in this particular class. I'm glad to see that you were able to find your way into the video classroom. You will be seeing more of this throughout the class as I try to keep students up to date and prepared for their assignments. So for the next few minutes, sit back and enjoy yourself. This is the easiest part of the class is watching me do my performance. So glad to have you here, and we'll be talking more later. Now, the first thing you always look at when you go into the class is the home page, because this is where I would post announcements. Okay, so whenever you go into your class to start some work, look at announcements, so if anything has changed, you don't want to miss it. Next, here's a little bit of information about me, and rather than spend a lot of time talking about what you can read there, I think this will serve as an introduction biography for me, and similar to what I'd like to see you put in your introductions, so that we know how you prefer to be called, what your nickname or name you want to go by, a little bit about your background, what you're looking forward to with your DBA, and so on. Just a little bit of information. Let us communicate more freely. Now, for those of you in the DBA program, your academic advisor is Dr. Eggertson. There's his picture, and there's his email address. He would be the person you would get in contact about scheduling, about if you need to take a leave of absence, or you have some issues that go beyond the scope of this particular class. He would be the next person to contact. The syllabus for the class is available to download, and the reason I do this is because when you try to convert from Word and put it into Blackboard, the formatting generally gets kind of messed up, and so I think it's just easier if you download the syllabus, and if you want to print out a hard copy, then you go ahead and do that. Also, I just wanted to mention in Blackboard we have there's a section before the weeks called Start Here, and this will be where I'll insert some information, usually in the form of video. So here we have a video on peer-reviewed journal articles that I've put together for you, and then scholarly writing, which will be important as we move into our writing exercises for week 2, 4, 6, and 8. Course material is rather skimpy for this class. You're going to be using the APA manual for your formatting and writing standards. Most of the material for the content of the class will be coming out of the library, the Kaiser Online Library, in the form of peer-reviewed journal articles. Grading system is the standard ABCF with the assigned percentages there. The graded assignments for the class that'll make up your percentages are 8 weekly discussion assignments, 2.5% each for a total of 20%. Then there'll be a written paper in week 2, another longer paper in week 4, and finally a longer paper in week 6, and then a shorter paper in week 8. Okay, and the associated percentages are shown to the right. Under certain circumstances, you may not be able to avoid a late assignment, turning in a late paper or making a late post to the discussions for the week. In that case, you should get in touch with me ahead of time, and maybe we can work something out. If I don't hear from you and a paper comes in late after the deadline, just to keep everything fair for all the students who are working according to the deadline, there's a 10%, up to a 10% penalty for 1 week late, up to 20% penalty for 2 weeks late, and so on. Plagiarism is an ongoing issue, and consequently we do use a program called SafeAssign, a plagiarism checker, for your written assignments. Now, there has been a policy change in the past year that the graduate school is no longer requiring SafeAssign for discussion posts, which makes things a little simpler. Okay. And generally, I never found a real big problem with that at the doctoral level. People generally by this time have their own ideas about things and want to say what they want to say, and so it's not really a matter of copying somebody else's work and saying this is what I think too. But it does become an issue on papers when students find information in something online that's easy to copy in without paraphrasing it. I mean, you're going to be using other people's work. There's no doubt about it. That's the whole point. You're reading, you're interpreting, you're analyzing, you're synthesizing. But then when the words come out, they have to be in your words, not the verbatim words of somebody else, unless it's in a quote, which means it's a direct quote and has to be referenced. So a large part of what we're trying to do here is get you to use other people's work, credible authors, experts in the field, but then understand what they're saying and then put it in your own words, and then of course claim this is where I got this idea from. But I'm not just copying and pasting it from an article into my paper. Final thing I want to talk about on this slide is the incomplete policy. Many students are unaware that there is such a thing. However, if you do get in a situation where you cannot complete the coursework and you think you would be getting a bad grade at the end, contact me and we'll try to work something out that allows you to take an extra up to 4 weeks of time in the new course, your next course, to finish up the old course. You have to have a certain amount of work done in the old course, and you have to realize the best grade you can get would be a B when you take an incomplete. However, it does in many times take a lot of the pressure off to get something done and allows the student to present their best work rather than something that is only partially complete. Okay. If you have any questions about that or get in that situation, contact me or your instructor at the time to talk about what your options are and what makes the most sense for your particular situation. So let's look at week one's assignments first. This will be the standard format for the class, so I'd like to spend just a little bit of time showing you what to expect. In week one, of course, you're going to be doing your introduction to the class, where you'll be talking about your name and your background and what you hope to accomplish with your doctorate and so on. So a little bit of introduction, but we're also going to be going over then the readings for the first week. In addition, this video will provide you with an overview of what I expect in terms of your discussion posts and also thinking about what's going to be coming up in the paper. So, first week, the topic is going to be the evolution of management and leadership research, both theory and practice. This is part of the reading list here, and these articles are all available in the EBSCOhost database in the Kaiser Library. There are 5 articles for this week. One of them is called The Evolution of a Science of Managing in America by Smitty and Naum. Management Theory and the Practice of Management, by Duncan. Managerial Leadership, a Review of Theory and Research by Uckel. 100 Years of Management by Craner, and The Management Century by Keitel. The intent and objective of this first week is to provide a kind of a historical perspective when we talk about management and leadership. What are we talking about exactly, and where did it come from, and where is it going? So this is the kind of the overview week. And consequently, the discussion question will be exactly that. How do researchers in this field, how do they understand it? How do they talk about it? How do they present it? And your goal here is not simply to say, well, Smitty and Naum said this, Duncan said this, Uckel said this. The idea is you read all of them, and then you come up with your own kind of overview and analysis of what they meant when you mix them all together, kind of like putting together a new dish in the kitchen. You got a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and you're going to put it all together and cook it a certain way, and it's going to be your dish then. Okay, so you're not simply reviewing each one of the articles individually, you're trying to synthesize them together. And you'll hear that word a lot. Synthesis. Okay. So I'd like to go over just how, for some of you, you've been doing this a long time, and this will just be repetition. For some of you, this may be a fairly early in your doctoral classes, and so I'd just like to show how I like to run a discussion. So you'll be putting in an initial post, but before you sit down and start typing away, you need to understand what the assignment is. So each week there will be a video which explains what the assignment is, what you're supposed to be doing. If you have any problems understanding that, or it doesn't seem to make sense to you, you can use the Ask Questions feature of the class. You can email me, you can phone me, you can text me. There's a lot of different ways, and I will get back to you generally the same day, as quickly as I can. You should read the material that's presented. That's the reason that I put in these readings, not just send you off to the library to find whatever you want, is I want you to read these articles. That provides us a consistent basis for the discussion, so we can talk about what Duncan said, versus what Nam and Smitty said, versus what Yukel said. They're talking generally about the same thing, but they all have different perspectives, and that's what we want to incorporate. That's what we want to talk about during our discussion. So you have to read the stuff to be able to have an opinion about what's being said. Before you start writing, again, plan out what you're going to say. Your initial presentation, your initial discussion post is basically your presentation to the class of how you interpreted the readings for the week. Okay? Just as if you stood up in the class and said, now I'm going to tell you what I think about the readings. That's what your first discussion post is supposed to do. You may find that you need more information. You may not feel like you've covered everything just using the information in the required readings. So you go back to the library, pull out some more articles, look at the references that were used in these articles. They provide a way of tracing back to where these ideas came from. So the whole idea is to teach you to do more research in the library. When you write your first discussion post, you're not going to type it into the Blackboard word processor. Hopefully you're going to put it into MS Word, and there you're going to do your editing and your spell checking and your revisions and get it so it looks nice and neat, like something that you would actually turn in for a doctoral level assignment. So you do all your spell checking and grammar checking, and then you copy your final draft of that MS document into the text portion of the discussion thread. I'm going to show you how to do that now. So when you get down to the bottom of this first week here, you get down to the discussion. Well, you click on week 1 discussion, and that brings you here. And then what I'd like you to do is create a thread. Okay, some classes the instructors want you all to write on the same thread. I don't. I would like you to create your own thread for each week's discussion. Then you put in the subject, whatever you want to call it. You can call it my thread, Bob's thread, discussion week 1 thread, whatever you want to. You have a subject. You have to put that in. And then you're going to copy and paste your MS Word document into the text portion here. And sometimes it works pretty well, sometimes the formatting gets a little messed up, so straighten it out as best you can and then submit. Just that simple. Now when you're writing your response posts during the week, and you will have to write 3 additional posts after your initial post, and you will have to post them on 3 different days. That's the whole idea of creating an ongoing discussion. The response posts are meant to stimulate the discussion and to carry it forward. So you're going to have to address a particular person, and you may start out your response saying, well, that's a nice job, you do a great work, I learned a lot. But if that's all you say, that doesn't do anything in terms of furthering the discussion. So you need to really take it further. For example, you might say, well, I agree with what you said about the scientific management era, but I don't really think Taylor's views are applicable in today's workplace. Have you seen any examples you could share? And as you can see, this will then require the initial responder, the initial poster, to respond and answer with some examples and to try to explain themselves. Okay, that's the whole idea of what we're trying to talk about here. As if we were sitting in a classroom and I asked the question and asked you to present your ideas and then ask, well, so what do you think about these ideas? Okay. Your response posts don't have to be as long and elaborate as your initial post. They can be fairly short, in fact, and they don't always have to be covered with a reference. Okay, these can be more or less your reaction based upon what you've already read. I mean, yes, I like to see more references brought in that extends the conversation, that advances it, it broadens it. Okay, but you can write these in a more normal conversational style. But again, it's not a chat room. Try to stay on topic, and they don't necessarily have to follow the APA formatting. As I mentioned, my objective is to, number one, demonstrate that you've done the required reading, and then develop a dialogue, a conversation that I can engage in and you can engage in with your other fellow students, and that's why I want everybody to work on their own thread so I can see the actual dialogue that's going on, who's talking to whom. Now, with only a few students in a class, many times it doesn't make a difference, but as the numbers get larger and the number of posts gets larger, it many times becomes very difficult to see who's saying what to whom. So, again, using an individual thread for each week is a requirement. It allows me to interject new ideas and to kind of direct the discussion in other directions. So that's pretty much what you need to do for the first week, and this will be the model for all the succeeding weeks in the discussion area. So the keys to success, first of all, don't freak out. This is something you can do. You need to learn how to go to the library and feel comfortable pulling things out of the library. Okay, so don't be your own worst enemy. You've got to manage your time. Okay, reading articles, journal articles, takes a lot more time than reading a chapter in a textbook. You may have to read it several times before you actually understand what the author is trying to get at. And it may take several readings for you to see how two different articles, what the comparison is, what the similarities and differences are. In addition, you should start a catalog of the articles that you've read. Whether you do this on a 3x5 file card, or you put it into an Excel spreadsheet, or you put it in a Word document. You know, there are software packages for doing this also, which we can talk about. But you should start thinking of these articles that you're reading going to provide valuable information for you as you work in your other classes, and you write other papers, and as you start to think about your dissertation. So to simply read things and then lose them entirely, like Sheldon, is you're wasting your own time. Okay, you will want those articles at some point in the future. I expect everybody to stay active in the discussions. This is a major component of the online classes. Okay, since we don't meet together in a physical classroom, we're meeting in a virtual classroom, and the discussion is basically our learning. That goes on, our interactive learning between students and other students, and between students and the instructor. So when somebody asks you a question or makes a comment about something that you've written, be sure to answer them. Be sure to think about what they've said and then come back with another comment. That's the whole point. The videos that I put together, such as this one, are there for you and your help, to help you with the assignments, to give you an idea of what I'm looking for. We also have other areas available for help. The Graduate Writing Studio is there to help you with your writing assignments. I encourage everybody, if they haven't done so already, to submit one of their papers to them and get some feedback from those people. They specialize on APA formatting, and they specialize on making your writing clearer and better. I'll do what I can, but I'm trying to judge the content of the class, not necessarily your writing skills. When I do provide comments and suggestions, I expect you to pay attention to them. So if I see the same problem repeating itself week after week after week, and you're not changing, you're not going to get ranked very high in my grade book. So when I make comments, I mean them to be taken seriously, and I mean them for you to work on those. Okay, so think about it. Think about it when I tell you to do something. And finally, don't be afraid to ask questions. You can, as I mentioned before, use the Ask Questions in Blackboard. You can use email. You can use the phone. But there's really no excuse for turning in an assignment that shows you didn't really understand what the assignment was all about. So if there's any questions about it whatsoever, even small things, you wonder, well, do you want it in this format, or do you want it in this format? Do we have to read this too? If you don't know, ask me a question. I'm sure that I've got an answer, and if I don't know the answer, I'll find it for you. So that's about wrapping it up for an overview of the class and the first week's assignments. So until next time, goodbye and good luck, and I'll see you in class.